Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission and guests and staff and partners. And we've got a good room full here in the auditorium at headquarters. So it is my pleasure to present to you my last director's update. Woohoo! Did I say that? Oh, my. All right, and in that spirit, a hearty congratulations to one Mr. Jason Sumners on his selection as the 10th Director of the Missouri Department of Conservation. Woo! Commissioners, I can say with full confidence that you have selected well and that Jason will lead this organization with just great competence and passion for the resource. And I certainly encourage all staff members to take any opportunity to interact with Jason and certainly support Jason as he transitions into this new role. And of course, I look forward to being a forever cheerleader to the Missouri Department of Conservation. What a great 2024 turkey season. I did not put that picture. It was a big picture of me. It's like, look at him and my turkey. Thank you, Jake, for that. But anyway, this year we did see a 6% increase in total harvest as compared to the 23 season and a 20% increase in harvest compared to the previous 5-year average with a total harvest of 47,119 between the youth season and the regular season. This is the 3rd year in a row in which harvest increased. Thanks to action by this commission, this was also the first season with all-day hunting on private land. I benefited from that as well. We will hopefully know more when all the data can be reviewed as to whether this change increased opportunity for those typically unable to hunt in the morning hours. Our team also had a pretty good hunting season. Got several pictures here that suggest it was fantastic all around. And I certainly hope that many were able to enjoy Missouri's exceptional spring this year in the turkey woods. MDC's CWD surveillance and management efforts for 23-24 have resulted in more than 37,000 samples tested for CWD. And of those, 162 tested positive for the disease. Although CWD continues to slowly spread in Missouri, our aggressive surveillance and management efforts are slowing the spread and keeping Missouri's deer population healthy. Just recently, the success of Missouri's CWD management efforts was featured in an article published by the National Deer Association. In an article entitled, "Missouri Shows Us How to Manage CWD and Deer for the Long Haul." Within the article, Lindsay Thomas, who is the author, stated this. She says, "The truth is 162 positive deer out of more than 37,000 tested is extremely good news, especially in a state that has been fighting CWD for more than a decade. Missouri deer hunters, landowners, and MDC deserve credit for this good news. And MDC's targeted removal effort stands out as a national example of CWD management tactics that work." It's pretty impressive. Therefore, I say a sincere thank you to all of our staff and partners and hunters and landowners for continuing to make significant contributions to this critically important fight to slow the spread of CWD and protect Missouri's deer herd. As we have been highlighting for you, members of the commission, the last several commission meetings, I wanted to again highlight some of the excellent habitat work being completed by our regional staff. Adam McKish is a landowner who utilized federal funds from the Heart of the Ozarks Landscape Scale Restoration Project to remove cedars from a 15-acre glade in St. Genevieve County. Mr. McKeish then later utilized the department's landowner and community assistance program funds to implement a prescribed burn on this glade. He captured these images with his drone and gave us permission to use them. The project lays adjacent to a major power line and had a large cedar slash load, and everyone on the burn crew was a first-timer to prescribed fire. In preparation for this work, Mr. McKish attended department burn workshops, and he and his team carried out the correct site preparations to ensure the burn went smoothly. MDC's private land conservationist, Luke Wimoff, recently visited the site and confirmed the glade vegetation is responding beautifully post-treatment. So this is a great example of projects that are possible to be completed by private landowners given the right steps are taken for education, preparation, and implementation. So on to the elk and bear drawing. We are nearing the end of the application window for Missouri's elk and black bear seasons, and any Missouri resident has until next Friday to apply for one of the 5 elk tags and one of the 400 black bear tags that will be allocated for the upcoming fall season. So far, at the beginning of this week, we have about 6,200 applications for the elk season and about a little over 4,000 applications for the black bear season. So good luck to all of those that are applying. I want to wish a huge congratulations to the Conservation Federation of Missouri for their recognition by the National Wildlife Federation as the National Affiliate of the Year. It's remarkable. Out of every affiliate organization nationwide, they chose Missouri as the top group for 2023. And to me, this is yet another example of Missouri conservation leading the way on a national level. So congratulations to Tyler Schwartz and his team on this well-deserved recognition. So there are many things going on within MDC as we turn from spring into summer. Our statewide resource management branch has been very busy, from spawning catfish with a yield of 626,000 channel catfish fry to over 12 million walleye eggs being set for incubation, to Blind Pony Hatchery collecting 2.1 million paddlefish eggs and setting about 750,000 fry to grow out. Our trout parks across the state are all reporting increases in trout tag sales compared to last year. The average of the 4 parks shows about a 9.9% increase in daily trout tags this year. And the leader among the 4 parks is Merrimack Spring Park, which is managed, of course, by our partner, the James Foundation, where they reported a 23% increase in sales. The fire program reports roughly 1,198 fires this year with over 60,000 acres consumed. Staff work around the clock to respond to emergencies such as these, and of course their service and dedication is of immeasurable value to the rural volunteer fire departments and communities they work to protect. And finally, staff at the Georgia White Nursery welcomed over 300 individuals for an open house in celebration of the nursery's 90th anniversary. Attendees to the event were able to see firsthand how the seedlings are lifted and graded and stored and shipped out to our customers. Other activities during the open house included a portable sawmill demonstration, a fishing clinic, and of course, lots of crafts. So a huge congratulations on 90th anniversary to our nursery. Moving on to the science branch, I wanted to highlight important movement in the department's turkey habitat initiative. There will be 6 landowner workshops that have been scheduled from May through July. These workshops will take place on private land, and they're intended to help landowners better differentiate good habitat from poor habitat, techniques to create the good habitat, and of course also to provide them with a biological foundation as to why nesting and brooding cover are key to a thriving turkey population. MDC staff will be on hand to help landowners navigate the cost share system as well. These workshops will also connect neighbors with shared turkey management goals, hopefully fostering a cooperative approach to landscape-level turkey habitat management. In addition to these landowner workshops, staff are also working on staff workshops for the fall. Now, these fall workshops will be similar to the landowner workshops, but they'll be geared towards MDC staff and MDC managed lands. Staff are also developing a turkey habitat management guide, which should be available by next summer. This document will provide valuable information for folks who are interested in managing their properties for wild turkeys. And finally, staff are filming turkey habitat video series. For those unable to attend a workshop, these videos are intended to be a condensed version of that material. This was made possible by a generous partnership grant by the Missouri chapter of the National Wild Turkey Federation. So great progress on the Turkey Habitat Initiative. Black vulture research. We have been partnering with the USDA on a multi-year study to better mediate conflicts with black vultures. In an effort to track black vultures and test management tools, 89 black vultures near the Missouri-Arkansas border were captured this spring and marked with a white tag on their right wing. Each tag has a letter and a number, as you can see in this picture. The tags may be visible from below while the birds soar or while birds are perched. 28 vultures were also equipped with radio transmitters to track their daily movements. The purpose of the study is to better understand black vulture movements, human-black vulture conflict, and to test vulture management tools. All sightings of tagged black vultures, either observed alive or taken by a landowner with the appropriate permit, should be reported to the U.S. Geological Survey's Bird Banding Lab online. So last month, we received some remarkable news. We, MDC, finally confirmed lake sturgeon were spawning in the Osage River. These endangered fish, nearly extinct and absent from Missouri's lakes and rivers for more than 100 years, were propagated and restocked by MDC and partners in the mid-1980s, with expansion into the Missouri River in the 1990s. Now, of course, females do not begin spawning until they are at least 25 years old, and even then only spawn every 3 to 5 years. So this is a story of restoration, of humankind nurturing a once lost resource back to its rightful place in our natural world. And it's not a bad picture of our new director either. Landowner Field Day. MDC recently partnered with MU Extension to co-host a Forest Health Field Day in the Shoal Creek Woodlands Priority Geography in Crawford County. Approximately 40 landowners from the area gathered at the farm of Bob Dollard to learn about various forest management strategies, to see completed practices firsthand, and hear directly from the landowner about his experiences. Topics included regeneration cuts and crop tree release and open woodland management and forest stand improvement and forest management planning, riparian buffers, and more. Natural resource professionals from MDC and MU Extension, the Nature Conservancy, and the Ozark Land Trust were on hand to provide technical assistance and answer questions. On to the education branch. MDC staff have always offered high-quality programs and engaged around 300,000 people annually. However, we are proud of the team's early successes engaging Tier 1 audiences and recruiting about 38% new customers while still earning a 97% satisfaction trust scores. These trust scores are particularly inspiring because we know from other survey efforts that generally about 70% of Missourians trust MDC, but once they attend an MDC program, their level of trust in MDC only continues to increase. Another example is in preliminary data that shows 87% of teachers believe their students are more interested in fish, forest, and wildlife after using Discover Nature School curriculum. So well done to our excellent education staff and all other staff who are supporting these efforts. And good luck with a very busy summer of connecting people, especially young people, with the outdoors. There is lots of construction activity across the state this spring and summer, and here are just a few highlights. The Shepherd of the Hills Conservation Education Center is progressing very well. The contractor is currently installing interior and exterior finishes, as well as installing electrical and mechanical equipment. You can see that the contractor is also making great progress on the intermediate raceways at Shepherd. Work has also started on the foundation for the entrance road at the drainage ditch crossing at Little River Conservation Area, and this is a vital project for the public's access to a very popular area. And of course, I'm a little excited about some of these photos related to the Boone County Nature School. It was declared substantially complete as of April the 10th. Over the summer, Columbia Public School staff will prepare the facility to receive students in the fall, and I cannot wait to see students filling these places of learning. It's just remarkable. So many thanks to our infrastructure management staff who are working hard through a very busy construction season. So speaking of infrastructure and Mother Nature, from drought to floods, here we go, as is typical, especially this time of year. In the first week of May, staff at Four Rivers Conservation Area in the Kansas City region reported a levee breach, as you can, I was gonna say, see in this video. Is it possible to see it in the video? Pretend that there is a video now going on. As the waters receded, staff were able to assess the damage. Unit 3 levee was blown out, Unit 2 pump station's door caved in, but MDC carpenters were on the scene the very next day to repair. The flood was exceptional, just below 2019 levels and a couple of feet below the 2007 levels. There was also flood damage reported at Shell Osage, with significant scouring at the Atkinson Lake Dam. But many thanks to our staff that monitored these conditions and mitigated as much of the damage as they possibly could have. Okay, agent highlights, and I think there was video here too, but we'll, okay, is what it is. Just you'll have to imagine the video. Listen to these details if you would. At approximately 4:40 p.m. on April 26th of this spring, Conservation Agent Mark Henry received a public service call from the Douglas County Sheriff's Office to respond to a swiftwater rescue where a van had been swept off the Beaver Creek Bridge at Douglas County Road 532. 2 females and an infant were trapped inside the vehicle about 200 yards downstream of the bridge, and the waters were rising. They had climbed through the sunroof and were sitting on the top of the van where the water was only about a foot below. Squires firefighter Michael Schiff had some swiftwater rescue training, so he boarded the boat with Mark. They were able to navigate the boat downstream past the van and then run back up against the van as Mark held the boat in place. Firefighter Schiff gave the victims life jackets and assisted them into the boat. Mark then ran the boat to the nearest bank where more deputies and first responders helped the victims out of the boat and safely on dry ground. On top of saving their lives of the occupants, Agent Henry also protected the lives of those first responders that lacked swiftwater rescue training by guiding their approach and making sure the rescue was conducted in a safe way. So my thanks is simply not enough other than to say, very well done, Agent Mark Henry. Then, on Wednesday, April 17th, Webster County Agent Andrew Feistel and K-9 Titan were assisting Pulaski County Conservation Agent Nathan Engel with an area search for evidence of turkey hunters who had possibly trespassed by boat and shot 2 birds on private property near the Gasconade River. Nathan, Andrew, and Titan assessed the property by boat, and then Titan was deployed. While searching, Titan jumped over a log and very unfortunately landed on a broken end of a large stick that impaled his chest between his 2 front legs. It was an incredibly serious injury with significant bleeding. Andrew and Nathan applied first aid and quickly drove Titan to a local veterinary clinic in Rolla where he did receive emergency care, but the facility was not equipped to treat the full injury. So the agents quickly drove to the MU Veterinary ER in Columbia for emergency surgery. After excellent care at the MU Veterinary Hospital, Agent Feistel was able to pick up Titan on April 19th to continue his recovery in the comforts of home. Titan is expected to recover and return to work after 8 weeks of rest. So that was very good news as well to hear about Titan and his recovery. And finally, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I have always ended with MDC history notes, and just here are a couple. On May the 10th, 1980, Shepherd of the Hills Visitor Center opened. On May the 6th, 1977, MDC and DNR agreed to form a Natural Areas Committee to administer the state's natural area system. And I think there's a highlight on that coming. And finally, on May 5th, 2011, Wild elk returned to Missouri after an absence of 150 years. 6 bull elk and 28 cows and calves arrive at Peck Ranch. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that is my report. Unless there are questions.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well done.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Robbie Deerhoff. Robbie has worked for the Department's Forest Health Program since 2013, first as a forest health specialist and now as forest health entomologist. She received her bachelor's and master's in biology from Truman State University, where she studied katydids. Robbie is a lifelong bug nerd and has an insect collection she started 30 years ago. She was originally from a farm in Lawrence County, now lives north of Columbia with her husband and 2 sons. Robbie?
Good morning, Commission. Good morning, everyone else. Nice to see you all today. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about periodical cicadas. Obviously, something I care very much about, as those of you who've been in this audience before know. All right, so periodical cicadas in 2024. Some of these slides were put together before we really knew what was going to happen, right? And are they loud where you're at? Yes. Are they not loud where you're at? There's some people that are telling me there's no cicadas where they're at. I see some head nodding there in Southeast. So what we're seeing this year in Missouri is one brood. Okay, we do not have 2 broods occurring here, just one, the Great Southern Brood, Brood 19. There are 4 species of 13-year cicadas that could be part of this brood. In Missouri, we're really only seeing about 3 of those species. There are no 17-year cicada species that are coming out in Missouri this year. Those are over in Illinois. And as far as population estimates go, we're not really sure in most places how many can or will come out. Estimates say anywhere from 50,000 to 1.5 million per acre. That's a pretty wide range, right? But I think some of you probably are hearing more like 1.5 million per acre. And those of us with smaller yards, maybe only 50,000 or so. The interesting thing about it is that each female can lay somewhere between 400 and 600 eggs. And only 2% of those eggs will ever reach adulthood. So there's only about a 2% survival with periodical cicadas. So the masses, that's an important strategy for them. If you see one of these cicadas down here on the bottom that is infected with this entomopathogenic fungus, it's called Massosporus cicadiana, and it's really interesting. I've seen just a few, but they're called the salt shakers of death, because they will fly around and release those spores onto the ground, and then those spores will infect that next generation in 13 or 17 years. So these are really interesting ones to find, and they can actually lead to very significant population control naturally in some areas. So here's the range map for the Great Southern Brood. Those red dots there are where the states that we expected Great Southern Brood to come out. And then you have Brood 13 there in Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, and then Wisconsin and part of Indiana. So that brood is the one that has confused the media this year, where everybody thought there would be 2 broods in one place when really they were just 2 broods that were geographically next to each other. So we do have 3 other broods that occur in Missouri, and so this is not your last opportunity to hear and see cicadas. If you live over on the east side of the state, then we'll be seeing some in 2028. If you live in the northern part of the state, where we don't have very many or any periodical cicadas this year, then in 2031, that's your year. And if you're over on the west side, then 2032 is when you're going to see some. So emergence for periodical cicadas, I don't know about you all, but it was pretty sudden in our yard. I think it was 2 Saturdays ago. There were not many that morning, and by that evening, it was like, wow, this is crazy. And by Sunday, it was like, oh dear, there's a bunch of them. So soil temperature needs to reach at least 64 degrees Fahrenheit at 12 inches depth. Originally, I told everybody that's when the iris bloom. I was wrong. It did not happen when the iris bloomed, so then we picked another flower and said, when this flower blooms, it's gonna happen. And we were wrong again, it didn't happen then. And then the peonies and the multiflora rose started blooming, and we said, guys, it's gotta be now. You have to come out of the ground. And about 10 days later, they came out of the ground. So they were a little bit late this year by previous standards. Why, I don't know. It could be the cold rains that we had periodically. There's various reasons that could have delayed their emergence, but in general, it seems like the population is healthy. We did start seeing holes. They pre-make their emergence tunnels early in April, even in the Columbia area. And so we expected that emergence to happen over a few weeks, and I think in a lot of places, most of the nymphs have come out of the ground at this point. So if you don't have them yet, you probably will not have them in your general area. How long do they last? About 4 to 6 weeks after they begin coming out of the ground. So depending on the weather, if it starts getting really, really hot, like it tends to in early June in Missouri, that could speed up their life cycle a bit, and they'll die a little sooner. But usually we say late April till the end of June at least. So this is one of the common questions I get from the media. And I think most of us that are scientists in some area of animals or plants, there's always has to be a human value placed on something, which I don't believe that's necessary for species. But the idea of what do we do, what do these guys do for the world? And what do I tell them? Well, there's a lot of cool things that they do for the world. They're a really valuable wildlife food source. So everything from turkey poults to raccoons and possums and coyotes and our 16-year-old beagle, they all eat these things, right? So very valuable food source. Songbirds are loving them. They aerate the soil, which I think is something that a lot of people don't realize how important those soil organisms are. Even moles aerate the soil. Don't tell my husband that. So the periodical cicadas, they are tunneling up and down in that soil profile. And in a really clay-heavy, compacted urban soil especially, that's allowing water and air to go into the soil. It's better for tree roots, it's better for plant roots, so that's really beneficial. And then when they die, their bodies will decompose, as some of you are smelling here lately, and they're great fertilizer for your yard. So that's another awesome thing they do. Plus fishing bait. Those of us that are anglers are really excited about Memorial Day fishing and getting to use some periodical cicadas. And if you're like me and you'd rather those family reunions in June or maybe those weddings be just a little bit shorter than they're gonna be, these will probably help shorten those outdoor events because they are quite loud as 100 decibels for a chorus of males. And so 100 decibels, that's a lawnmower. That's not something you want to stand next to. And as much as I love periodical cicadas, I had to come in over the weekend from doing yard work. At about 4 o'clock, I just couldn't take it anymore. So what do they do to trees? This is an important question because, of course, trees with climate change and other weather stressors that we're seeing, there's a lot of tree health concerns out there right now. So adding one more thing to it doesn't seem like a good idea. But what periodical cicadas are doing to trees, they've been feeding underground on tree roots for the last 13 years. Those nymphs have been. And then when they come above ground, those adults are going to feed a little bit on tree sap also. But the main damage that they do, the females will use their sharp needle-like ovipositor to make slits in the bark of pencil-sized diameter twigs, and they'll start laying those eggs in those slits. And so sometimes that twig will go ahead and die eventually later on this summer. Sometimes it doesn't, but you end up with quite a bit of decay in that twig. So this can look very dramatic. We call this flagging. Several different things can cause flagging on a tree, but this year we'll probably attribute most of it to periodical cicadas. And it can be a lot, but really for a mature, healthy landscape level tree, this is something that is kind of like a light pruning. And it isn't anything that is to be worried about. This is something you might be concerned about on small or younger trees. So if you've planted trees in the last 3 to 5 years, they don't have a whole lot of twigs to spare, and almost all of their twigs are in that pencil diameter range. So I do recommend that you either delay planting until later this year, or with established trees, you go ahead and cover those. So that long-term root feeding that I just mentioned, is that a problem? Probably not, because native trees have evolved with the periodical cicadas, but it is something to keep in mind. Will moles be worse? Another common question I get, and really I don't think so, because most of the big food source is leaving the ground, right? And those periodical cicada eggs will hatch here in about 6 weeks, and those tiny nymphs will drop down into the soil. They'll be about the size of a grain of rice, so they'll be harder for the moles to find. These big crunchy ones that they've been munching on lately have probably made their populations a little higher in the last few years. So are periodical cicadas harmful to people or pets? Absolutely not, unless you have a dog that just really loves to eat them. And as I mentioned my beagle earlier, he can eat an ungodly amount in a single day, and he seems fine, but I think some dogs are very sensitive to that amount of protein and crunchy exoskeleton in their digestive tract, so keep that in mind. But periodical cicadas do not sting, they do not bite, they don't even have the parts that could sting or bite. So they're really great insects to introduce to kids, because they're big, they're easy to catch, they squeak, they make fun sounds, so they're great insects. How do you deter them? Well, why would you want to? They're so cool, right? But please don't use pesticides, because number one, it's probably not gonna work, and number two, you may be killing other beneficial things. And I have read that bagpipes can be a deterrent, and that is something we are yet to test on our own personal time, I promise, not on work time. But bagpipes, apparently they don't like it. They find that offensive, so maybe it's just the player of the one time it was tested, I'm not sure. So as far as research goes, MDC has partnered with USGS to help them with a project that they started this year. They're looking at contaminants in cicadas. And one of the reasons is because these are very long-lived insects that could be accumulating things like mercury, lead, PFAS. And so we are on a mission to collect from 50 different sites this year. I think it's about 80 individual cicadas at each site. And then we're also doing an emergence whole count there to see if we can get a better idea of the population. That population model is harder to come by than we thought. But the contaminants part of it is great, and I do have a kit here to show you, but I think I know exactly who needs this kit. I think there is a nephew of a commissioner that would really like to collect some cicadas for this project. Yes, it's a present for sure. So mapping efforts, if you have iNaturalist on your phone, it would be great if you would snap some pictures of the ones in your yard, flip them over so that the underside is exposed in those pictures. That's how we can identify the species most easily, and send those in. That'll help with knowing which species are where. There's also a project called Cicada Safari, which I'll show you on the next slide. And then University of Connecticut is summing up all this data from both of these. So Cicada Safari is an app you can download on your phone, and it works a lot like iNaturalist, but it's more specifically for cicadas. And it'll help us to know where they are, when they're coming out, which species there are, and hopefully we can get an idea long-term of what's going on with periodical cicadas across the range, because with climate change and other stressors that they're experiencing, it's really hard to study these every 13 or 17 years. So this could be a good year for a baseline on those species. So yes, you can eat them. I have not this year. I have in the past. Periodical cicadas are best eaten when they are still white, like some of those other photos I showed you. That's right when they come out of their exoskeleton from the nymph stage. And they taste like cold canned asparagus. I don't know about that, but we'll get somebody to try it and we'll report back. So Maryland cicadas and chocolate trillers. It's up to you if you want one of those. So with that, I will take any questions you have. No questions? Well, you know how to get a hold of me if you have any, so thank you very much.
A great presentation.
Great job,
Very-
Robbie.
Very informative.
Thank you.
Are any restaurants serving cicadas that you know of?
So 13 years ago, Sparky's Ice Cream in Columbia was in trouble for serving cicada ice cream. Apparently, it was just to their own staff, but the health department still frowned upon the making of it in their facility. And so, no, I've not heard of anything yet, but maybe this weekend, Memorial Day project.
Excellent.
Okay.
Great job, Robbie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
The next item is, we have an action item. It's the consent calendar. Does any member of the commission have anything they'd like to withdraw, pull off the consent calendar for discussion?
Okay. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Pauly. If you would indulge me, I would like to take a brief diversion and recognize a couple of guests that weren't here when Sarah did her recognition. So we've been joined by Ron Reagan, who is currently the Executive Director of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, and Chuck Sykes, who serves as President of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies and is the Wildlife and Freshwater Fisheries Director for the Alabama Department of Natural Resources. So they came in last night to celebrate Sarah, and we appreciate them joining us here today. So thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Mr. Chairman, you'll recall that earlier this year, the commission voted to approve recommendations for regulation changes, which were identified by the Regulations Committee during its annual review of the Wildlife Code. Following the commission's initial consideration in February, those proposed rulemaking were filed with the Secretary of State's office and published in the Missouri Register, which initiated a 30-day public comment period. While a few proposed changes generated limited public comment, the proposed changes related to 3 CSR 10-11.155 decoys and blinds, specifically related to the Upper Mississippi Conservation Area, generated more significant input. 3 individuals have requested time to speak to the commission. At this time, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I think we have 3 individuals speaking today, Scott Bryant and Craig Sandiker and Paul Keevan. I hope you really appreciate it, and just make a couple of comments on this. In the 4 years that I've been on the commission, we have never had or allowed 3 speakers time to speak. The reason I'm pointing that out is that this commission really looks at topics thoroughly. It wears out staff in the process we're doing it, but we like to know, we like to understand the process. And so I talked to Sarah, and she said, this is kind of exception is exception. And I said, yeah, but I said, there's obviously, this is something very important to people. We try to look at topics that represent people's best interest all the way around. And I know there's some emotion tied to this, and I would really appreciate it. The speakers that present today are factual and evidence-based information on the points they want to make. And with that, Scott, I'd like to have you go ahead and speak, if you're available.
First, I'd like to thank the commission for allowing us all to speak today and give us an opportunity to hear the public view. I am Scott Bryant, the president of Illinois Federation for Outdoor Resources. I represent over 158,000 people in the state of Illinois and 17 waterfowl organizations that use the 3 pools that will be in play here with these rule changes. I've talked to all of those people. We do a lot of youth programs to try and get youth hunting more in the state of Illinois. I know that Missouri has lost, I think it's right at 60,000 resident hunters in the last 10 years. And I do believe that if these changes are made, that it will lose more. I know that I have over 400 people that I know just from the Alton area that buy hunting license to draw these duck blinds every year and hunting them, I being one of them. I applaud the Missouri Department of Conservation for all of the things it's done over the years to make sure that they listen to the people and to keep funding for their agency. You guys are by far as I am concerned, at 27 years of doing what I do, one of the best states in the whole union to take care of its people and its resources. With the 1/8, the 1% sales tax and the things that you guys have done, which I've tried to pass in the neighboring state with no success. I actually moved and will not buy an Illinois hunting license anymore and bought a house down in southeast Missouri, right by Little River Conservation is where me and my family and my 40-some people hunt now. So I think that kids and youth and anyone that's going out on the Mississippi River and you have to put a boat blind on a boat in the early morning hours, we're gonna be looking for people like I was looking last week. Any child right now in the state of Missouri, 16 years or older with his father, can get in a John boat and go out there and get in a permanent structure blind, throw out some decoys and hunt. I think a lot of this being driven from outfitters and people that just want to open everything up so they can take people out there and make a lot of money. I've never one time in pool 26 or 25 went out there in my boat to go hunting in Missouri and not been able to get into a public duck blind somewhere. Now, we've changed rules here, made it more so boat hunters didn't have to build blinds, they don't have to be inspected. And yet still, I can still go out there today and get in a duck blind anywhere on one of those areas in the morning and go hunting. And I don't have to have anything but a boat and some decoys. So I would urge that we look at that, the safety issues as well, and the total commitment by this agency to keep hunters going in the field. I'm 60 years old. A lot of people my age are 60 and 70 years old. I'm not hunting out of a boat every day. So you're gonna take that opportunity away from me. So I would urge that you guys look at that very harshly. I appreciate being able to speak here on behalf of the residents of Illinois. I know we will see a lot of Missouri residents next weekend at the Illinois duck blind draws, and we always welcome them as well. So I look forward to seeing and what happens here. Keep up the great work on everything else you do, and thank you all for letting me speak today on behalf of the people of Illinois. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Craig? Andiker?
I'm not quite as versed as Scotty, so I have to write mine down and read it. Dear Commissioner, Director, Commissioner, and staff, good morning. My name's Craig Sontker. I grew up in North St. Louis County hunting, fishing, and now making a living commercial fishing on the Mississippi River. I'm here to talk about the long history of waterfowl hunting from blinds on the Mississippi. I'm a third-generation waterfowl hunter on the Mississippi, a heritage in me, and now my children and grandchildren, generations 4 and 5. In my family, I have members who rode out the great Armistice Day storm, November 11th, 1940, down on a blind on Dresser Island in St. Charles County, burning their cherished wooden decoys to stay alive, stay warm, and survive. The Mississippi is no force to be reckoned with. Even without a storm like that one in 1940, perfect waterfowl conditions are hazardous. No matter where you hunt, but a 25 to 30 mile per hour wind from the northwest makes a river turn from a beautiful rolling river to an ocean, where the only safe place to hunt is from a stationary blind, not bouncing a boat with 3-foot rollers. This season, God willing, will be my 55th year waterfowling. I have hunted and guided all over the state, including many of the most prestigious duck clubs in St. Charles and Lincoln counties that some of you here before me have hunted. For me, my heart and my roots always come back to the river. I personally prefer the muddy waters of the river over a flooded field. Why? If I had time, I could tell you 1,000 memories why. One time I read an article in your own conservation magazine about the efforts to recruit and retain young hunters and to keep them for the future. How's that working for you? According to figures from recent years, Missouri has lost over 10,000 hunters of all kinds per license and tag sales. Honestly speaking, how do you recruit young and new hunters without blinds on the river? Young children through college age and young families can't afford anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 or more to join a club. Most can't even afford decoys. Thus, the opportunity to hunt public blinds at no cost over someone else's decoys is a fabulous starting point. Veteran hunters on the river often see these beginning hunters at the gas stations, boat ramps, and often invite them to go with us. This phrase, veteran hunter, comes with one thing for sure: age. We welcome young eyes and legs for chasing cripples, picking up, and moving decoys. Also, please remember that MDC is not a Fortune 500 company striving for large profits. As high up the chain of command as you may go with MDC, please remember, every one of you still works for us, the people. Lastly, I ask you to squash this proposal dead and now forever. Save the hunting from blinds on the Mississippi River so that my grandchildren and their future children may get to experience the heritage of hunting from blinds on the Mississippi River. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. The last speaker on this would be Paul Keevan.
Hello. Hey, Commission. My name is Paul Keevan. I live in Lincoln County. I'm the chairman of the Missouri chapter of the conservation organization Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Our organization represents thousands of Missourians who like to hunt, fish, forage, hike, camp, and more on our public lands. Nationally, BHA is known as the voice of public lands, and locally, our chapter strives to be the hands of public lands. And our volunteers do just that. Not only do they hunt and fish on public lands, but they participate in stewardship projects. All across the state, we have worked on projects as simple as cleaning up trash to bigger projects like removing invasive plant species to improve habitat. It is truly inspiring seeing folks giving up their most valuable resource, their time, to give back to public lands. In Missouri BHA, we're very excited about the possibility that this change brings. When we can commit right now to being involved in the cleanup efforts that will be needed to remove the decades of debris and trash left behind from the building of these permanent blinds. And like most of you, I've spent a lot of time in our wild places across, across this nation. In fact, I'm taking my kids to the Tetons and Yellowstone here in a few weeks. And the value that these pristine and wild places add to the lives of every American is incalculable. And we all know the fact that we have these wild places didn't just happen. It took bold decisions to keep them that way. My kids are at the age where they're infatuated with stories of our rich, wild history here in Missouri, from Daniel Boone to Lewis and Clark expedition to the fictional tale of Huckleberry Finn. Floating down that very stretch of river, their minds just crave for wild places to explore. But unfortunately, the Upper Mississippi Conservation Area isn't a very wild place anymore. And that's kind of sad. You know, I want my kids to be able to hunt and fish at the Upper Mississippi, and when they do, I want them to feel adventure. I want them to feel like they're the first person to ever be there. But instead, they'll encounter man-made structures and a duck-blind graveyard littered with concrete and debris. And that's not fair. They deserve to have a place free of human trace. We all deserve to have places that are wild, and we can accomplish that with this change. Missouri BHA fully submits this proposal. In fact, we think it's awesome. By changing this to a non-restrictive open waterfowl area, it will increase access to quality habitat for waterfowl hunters. It brings the waterfowl regulations in line with other conservation areas, making it more user-friendly and easier to understand. And in a world where hunting access is becoming increasingly difficult and permissions are hard to come by, it is important that we make connecting to the outdoors possible, particularly for waterfowl hunting. This change will make it less restrictive for folks to utilize our public lands, and that is awesome. A lot of folks felt inconvenienced with having to switch from using lead ammunition on public land, but now that the dust has settled, we can all agree it was a necessary and good science-based change. Folks can still waterfowl hunt on public land, just a little differently. It certainly was worth the inconvenience. The same goes in regard to these permanent duck blinds. With the advancements of portable blinds, lightweight decoys, boats, waders, we no longer have to sacrifice having rivers full of man-made structures and this antiquated draw system that limits the public's ability to access this conservation area. I thank you for your time. And I'm so excited that folks like you are bold enough and have the courage to make the changes that will live on for generations. And me and my kids, we can't wait to do our part to help clean it up and restore the Upper Mississippi Conservation Area to its wild beauty. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
All right, so as a reminder, the Upper Mississippi Conservation Area blind drawing differs significantly from the draw system at the 14 intensively managed wetlands, for which spots are allocated daily for the 60-day waterfowl season. The Upper Mississippi blind draw allocates the opportunity for construction of semi-permanent blinds and the restricted use of blind sites for a duration of 2 years. To reduce complexity of regulations, create consistency with other open waterfowl hunting opportunities, simplify enforcement, and expand hunting opportunities, the department proposes to remove the rules around blinds and decoys. Changes to this rule would eliminate the drawing to allocate blind locations on the Upper Mississippi Conservation Area after this year's drawing. A total of 1,256 comments were received, the majority of which were in opposition, citing safety concerns related to hunting from boats, limiting opportunities for youth, the elderly, the people with disabilities, enforcement issues, and hunters fighting over hunting locations, and loss of tradition of the semi-permanent blind construction on this area, as you heard from our speakers. While fewer in number, those in support were equally as passionate on the topic, stating the proposed changes would level the playing field for the opportunity to hunt conservation areas by changing the rules from restrictive to non-restrictive and bringing the regulations in line with other Missouri public land waterfowl areas. Some in support voiced concerns related to manipulation of the draw system, and others expressed their belief that those in opposition forged comments and petitions. A detailed summary of the comments received may be found on final orders of rulemaking included in your commission packet. This presentation of orders of rulemaking as a formal commission action signifies the final step in the department's regulations process. The commission has the authority to adopt as originally written, amend, or withdraw the proposed regulations. If approved today, most regulations will be effective on August 30th of this year, with changes to ginseng regulations effective July 1 of 2025 to align with the commercial permit year that runs from July 1 to June 30. Mr. Chairman, unless the commission has questions or concerns, I request approval for all final orders of rulemaking with no changes to the original recommendation.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
I think this warrants some discussion.
Sure.
And a couple of questions. One that Scott brought up in his discussion was decreasing the opportunity for, the youth. And I know in the comments that I read through, there's also discussion of handicap and elderly, that sort of thing. Could you give me some insight? Are we providing other opportunities of places for those individuals to hunt? Or what is the opportunity? Or can you give me some insight from the department standpoint?
Yeah, as many will know, we do have an established set of ADA blinds at many of our intensively managed wetlands in which folks can access. We provide additional youth hunting opportunities on our intensively managed wetlands. During the youth portion of the waterfowl season, our wetland areas are open. We do not require the draw system, and so we are attempting to be attentive to those recruitment types of issues and do lots of workshops with wetland-related organizations to engage youth hunters in the outdoors. So I do feel that we are providing opportunities. There is no doubt that being afforded a blind to pull up to certainly is easier. I'll also say that we've heard from newer waterfowl hunters that don't feel comfortable entering into somebody else's blind. And so it's a complicated issue, as you heard from all of the individuals that spoke this morning.
Okay. And I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I had several. But the safety issue as far as hunting from, boats, blinds, on the Mississippi, and I think Craig mentioned that, 3-foot whitecap is a lot easier to hunt. Do we provide other opportunities as adverse weather conditions that they can hunt in? And does the department deem that there's a safety concern just getting to the blind in those conditions?
Yeah, I think we all recognize that many times waterfowl hunting occurs in some pretty dramatic weather conditions, and there is some inherent risk associated with that. And so, yeah, I can't speak specifically to the challenges that those folks face out on the river, but navigating the river during terrible conditions to get to the blind or not get to a blind is certainly one that puts folks at risk.
Okay. Another question was the timing of implementation of this. If I understand this correctly, even if we vote on this, it seemed odd that it didn't go into effect immediately, but we were still going to conduct the draw this summer. Is that correct? And can you give me some insight on the logic of that, Jason?
That is correct, and that's been staff's recommendation, understanding the longstanding history here and the complexity of the issue, that they thought it was appropriate to have the opportunity to communicate with hunters at the June draw that will occur this year about the change, educate and inform them of the change, and then be able to work with our federal partners at the Corps of Engineers and the Fish and Wildlife Service, who I'll note have also submitted letters in support of this recommendation, to work with hunters and as was mentioned earlier, to clean up some of the things that have occurred, to develop a plan for enforcement and a long-term strategy as how we deal with this issue. Again, there have been a number of changes over time as it relates to management of the Upper Mississippi Conservation Area in response to things that we've heard from the hunting public, and we've surveyed them specifically about the Upper Mississippi Conservation Area through time. And so staff's recommendation is that we be thoughtful and deliberate. As you all know, the discussions that have occurred over the last few months related to this regulation, to just be thoughtful as we proceed, certainly recognizing the longstanding tradition that is here.
Okay, I just have two more questions, and I promise I'll stop. But of the other 14 intensively managed wildlife or wetlands areas, do we allow this tradition of putting a semi-permanent structure?
We do not. This is the one remaining situation in which permanent structures or semi-permanent structures are allowed. On our intensively managed areas, we do have some areas in which the department has constructed permanent blinds. But for the most part, it is boats, it's layout boats, it's just wade and shoot.
Okay, and then the last, of course, I've read a lot of information on this, but the U.S. Corps of Engineers sent a letter in support of this regulation change. And I know I've read some comments all the way back to 2008 with conflict that's happened with hunters and that sort of thing. Can you give me some insight on both? I know it's a two-part question, but I kind of like to get some insight on that also.
Yeah, this is not a new issue, and it's been one that we have attempted to address for some period of time. And as you indicated, staff had raised the concern as far back as 2008 to the Regulations Committee as an issue that we needed to address. And we have been working with the Army Corps of Engineers as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for a number of years to find a solution to that, and the three agencies have agreed that this is the path that should go forward.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions and comments, and thank you, Jason. First of all, congratulations. I hope I have a moment sometime this morning to give you more of a proper congratulations for your first meeting as the director designee, I guess, until you take the oath of office, and we're looking forward to your leadership, and we're going to miss Director Pauly as well. On the issue of these blinds, this is something that has caught my eye. I am an amateur duck hunter as well in that part of the state, and I've had a number of people come to me about this proposed rule regulation, both pro and con. And as was highlighted by the chairman, the notion that it goes into effect, I think, in August, you said, and there will be a draw in June, but it will not, these blinds will not be eliminated for 2 years is good, in my opinion, because it does give us a chance to see if alternatives are made available and if we can find some creative way to make up for any perceived loss that might happen to hunting opportunities along the river. I know with the elimination of some of the blinds, I think, at Columbia Bottoms and some of the other changes that have occurred, there is that perception. But I also have heard and read and studied the idea that more hunting opportunities will be forthcoming. And I understand the expectations of some folks who have been there, as I think Mr. Brown said, for perhaps 3 generations. You know, what that means and change is not easy, but I want to take a good look at this and keep my eye on it for the next couple of years and just understand how it works and how we've developed from here. So that was more of a comment. I don't think I added a question mark after any of those statements, but I do have one question. What is Illinois doing in this situation? I understand that they have a program similar, and have they found the same challenges, and have they made changes, or what opportunities may be expanded for these hunters who feel like they've lost opportunity on this side of the river in Illinois?
Yeah, it's my understanding that Illinois does have a relatively similar sort of program, and certainly folks from Illinois could speak better as to their specific situation. It is my understanding that their staff end up spending a substantial amount of time inspecting, reviewing, making sure those blinds are safe in terms of their allocation of them. That's one of the things that we had stopped doing because we're not extremely comfortable assuming the responsibility of designating that one of these river blinds is safe to be inhabited. And so it's one of those things we've got to be very careful with in terms of liability of the agency. So they do have a program. It's a pretty staff-intensive program to implement.
Yeah, well, good. I hope that program is able to pick up some of the perceived loss, if there is in fact loss, and I really hope that more opportunity is created for the hunters that do hunt along the river. And I want to just say that I'm very appreciative and grateful for Scott Brown's comments and Craig Soccer's program and Paul's comments as well. And I'm going to keep those close in mind as I'm finding myself in my waders and talking to fellow duck hunters as we approach the upcoming season. So I'm supportive of moving forward to take some action today and to address what has percolated for a number of years. But like I think I said with the all-day turkey hunting regulation, I'd like to see if that bears out like we believed it would.
Yeah, and on that point, Mr. Commissioner, you know, we have been in our postseason waterfowl survey asking specific questions about use and utilization of the Upper Mississippi Conservation Area. And so we've got baseline data there, and this discussion around will more people use it, will less people use it, will, you know, the impacts be unexpected or whatever. We do have the opportunity through that survey to continue to monitor through time, to do just as you have indicated, you know, continue to monitor the situation. If the commission chooses to make the decision to move forward today, we have and will always continue to adapt to changing social and biological challenges that we face. And so I think none of us take this decision lightly and recognize that, you know, there are very different views and perceptions as to how we should proceed.
Yeah, and I want to underscore that point. I know that no one takes it lightly, and I have probed a little bit along the road here, more than a little bit, and And I have seen a full compilation of the science-based, the public opinion-based, and so on. So thank you very much for doing that, and I'll look forward to hunting myself along the river and learning all about this.
Any other questions, Commissioners?
Jason, discussion about removal of these semi-permanent blinds, trash and debris, and I'm just kind of trying to visualize what all that might appear to be today. If these were to be removed, how does that take place? Is that a responsibility of MDC, or does that rest with the Corps of Engineers, or how does that take place?
It will be a joint effort, and we will work we'd work closely with both the Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and members of the hunting community that are interested in assisting in that, to do that in a safe and responsible manner. But as the letter from the Corps of Engineers indicated, they are prepared and ready to work with us to develop a plan to do that.
Is there any hazardous material involved at all, or do you know?
I couldn't even venture to speculate as to what we might find.
Okay, thank you.
Margie, you have any questions? I did have one more, so the total number of blinds involved in this draw is like 92 or 90, is that right?
Yes, I believe so.
And how many of those are actually utilized or constructed, do you know?
Yeah, indications for staff on an annual basis, about half of those, through time, we've seen more, increased requests. It was mandated at one point in time that you had to build a blind, and then that was changed in 2014 or 2016 to allow folks to use boats, as a request of the changing dynamic of the river, and blinds getting, spending a lot of time building a blind, then it getting blown out by the river or being flooded or damaged. We made that change, and so since that point in time, staff indicate about half the sites end up with a
Okay, so if I
semi-permanent
understand
blind.
this proposal correctly, and I want to make sure I fully understand it, with this change, then, there would not be a draw system in this area, is that correct? It would be, you could hunt the area as you want to hunt it, is that correct?
Following the close of the 25 waterfowl hunting season.
So, I mean, in that perspective, it increases opportunity, I believe.
It absolutely does. We designated these sites, but that may not, given the weather and water conditions in any particular year, represent the best place to put a blind or to hunt from. And so that has been a challenge in the past in terms of just manipulations of the site, because you build it in the summer, and depending upon what fall rains and things like that do, the river course may change. And so, yes, it is our belief that with the absence of the establishment of the permanent blinds provides hunters to be more mobile and better utilize the space that is available.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just quickly apologize for mispronouncing Scott Bryant's last name and Craig Songer's last name, and my apologies. But also, thank you for providing me the maps and the schematics and where these blinds are, so I could see those relative to other hunting opportunities that exist today. And that's helpful, and I look forward to walking through those areas as well sometime soon.
Okay.
If I could ask one question. Often, we're asked as commissioners, why do we make the changes when we make them? So if you could, Jason, summarize, why is now the time to make a change to this regulation?
That's a great question. It's an issue we've been dealing with for some time and trying to wrap our arms around what's the best approach. And for the first time, I would say us, the Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have agreed on a path forward and are willing to address the issue. And so one of the important things for the Corps of Engineers was us making regulations consistent. And for the Fish and Wildlife Service, the consistency of regulations, opening up public lands, the perception, reality or perceived that public lands were being held, kind of privately by the establishment of these blind sites is something that the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Corps is extremely attentive to right now. And so, I think it's just a matter of the agencies finally figuring out a path forward, and the draw being kind of at the core of that to get regulations consistent across the board, so everybody knows where they stand, where their authorities are, and how to best move forward.
Any other question? Just one final comment before I call for a vote on this. I'd just like to comment of how thorough this commission is in looking at these difficult topics and really trying to make the best decision that serves the best interest of the majority of Missourians. Because this topic has been talked about a lot more than just the conversation here. And,
I have been involved in the change of numerous regulations, some of them very significant, and you all have taken this change and this discussion as serious or more serious than many of those. And so, yes, I can attest specifically to that. This peppering of questions has been going on for some time.
Yeah, I know I've
And I
worn you out.
appreciate that because that challenges us in our assumptions and our discussion and trying to make sure that we're making the best decisions possible for the citizens. I certainly appreciate the questions.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to call for a vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the Regulations Committee met on April 12th to consider recommendations related to the upcoming fall deer hunting season and proposed amendments to some permit fees to reflect more current cost adjustments based on changes in the Consumer Price Index. Copies of all orders of rulemaking are included in your packet. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to invite Servid Program Supervisor Jason Isabel to the podium to provide details of today's fall deer hunting regulations recommendations. Jason?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, director and deputies. It's a pleasure to be here this morning to provide our recommendations for this year's deer season. I want to start out with some thank yous. Certainly want to thank Aaron Hildreth, our Servid biologist, Kevin Wiskirkin, who's now our wildlife program supervisor, and Deb Hudman, our wildlife health program supervisor, for their assistance in crafting these recommendations. Also want to thank members of our whitetail deer working group and the rest of our staff that have their hand in deer management in one way or another throughout the year. Here are the topics that I'm going to cover this morning. I'll have a brief summary of last year's deer season, provide an update about chronic wasting disease, touch briefly on our efforts to revise our 10-year deer management plan, present our recommendations for this fall's deer season, and then some regulatory considerations for the 2025 deer season. So Missouri hunters had an outstanding deer season last year. It was a record harvest. It edged out the previous record that was set in 2006. Also had a record harvest of antlered bucks, and it was the third highest doe harvest on record. And looking at the various seasons and portions of last year's deer season, going through those and touching on them briefly, our archery season harvest was slightly below where we were in 2022. Not surprising, our November portion last year was the earliest that it was going to be, which of course provides more opportunity for our firearms hunters earlier in the rut and less opportunity for our archers. Expect to see a pretty healthy increase in our archery harvest this year with the November portion shifting back to the 16th of the month. Our November portion, where most of our deer are harvested, slightly behind 2022. I attribute that mostly to the stellar weather that we had in 22. It was sustained cold weather throughout the 11-day portion, probably the best that I've ever seen, best I ever expect to see in my career. But the November portion harvest last year was above the 5-year average. And then I wanted to highlight 2 brand new portions of firearms deer season. Recall, commissioners, last year was the first year that we had the early antlerless portion, that 3-day firearms opportunity in early October, and the CWD portion that was open in our CWD management zone counties. That was a 5-day firearms portion right on the back end of our November portion. So with Missouri's deer population being at desired levels in most counties, but the population continued to increase, these were our efforts to provide more opportunity for our hunters to harvest deer in hopes of stabilizing that growing population and keeping it within social carrying capacity, and then providing additional opportunity in the CWD management zone to slow the growth of those populations and to help achieve our disease management goals. And so if you add those 2 totals together, roughly 28,000 deer, and our harvest last year was about 27,000 above what it was in 2022. So going into that, the big question was how much of that would those season portions be additive, or would it just shift harvest in different times of the year? But I think we can say looking at the numbers with some certainty that the additional opportunity was welcomed by our hunters, and they took advantage of that. Our youth portions, of course, shorter portions, early youth 2 days, late youth 3 days. We tend to see a lot of volatility in those numbers, given their shorter periods and at mercy of the weather that Mother Nature throws at us on those weekends. And last year was a perfect example, with early youth being down nearly 20%, late youth being up nearly 30%. Nice healthy increase in our late antlerless portion harvest of nearly 20%, and then alternative methods, a large increase, 43%. We tend to see quite a bit of volatility in alternative methods depending on the timing of Christmas and New Year's and when that season falls. So even though we saw a really large increase last year, it was about right in line with the 5-year average. So we look at it cumulatively, 326, 448, a 9% increase from the previous year, and as I mentioned, a new record harvest in Missouri. Just wanted to show the statewide harvest graph. We see the previous record in 2006. At that period in time, we were very liberal with our antlerless harvest opportunities, particularly in central and northern Missouri, trying to reduce overabundant deer populations in those portions of the state. As you can see, we were successful at doing that, and then we had the severe hemorrhagic disease outbreak in 2012, which really took a toll on deer numbers throughout much of the state. We see the large drop in harvest in 2013, and ever since then, we've been climbing back as that population has responded and as we've gradually liberalized hunting regulations, and then we see the new record harvest last year. I always like to show this graph, and it shows the composition of our deer harvest in regard to antlered bucks, does, and button bucks, at least in this time series going back to the mid-1980s, because I think it does a nice job of telling the story of the various phases that we've been in deer management for the last several decades. So highlighting the first period, mid-80s to about 2000, we had growing deer populations throughout the state, and on average, we were shooting slightly more antlered bucks than we were does during that period in time. Fast forward to about the year 2000, as I mentioned, we were above objectives in a lot of central and northern Missouri counties, became very liberal with antlerless harvest opportunities to try to reduce deer numbers, while at the same time, we're still below objectives in a lot of the southern Missouri counties, and those populations continue to increase slowly. So during that period of time, we were harvesting a lot more does than we were antlered bucks. We had the severe hemorrhagic disease outbreak I mentioned in 2012, became much more conservative with antlerless harvest opportunities to allow that population to respond. And since then, as you can see in that last red circle there, our antlered buck harvest has continued to increase. Our doe harvest has continued to increase by design. I think in terms of the antlered buck harvest, what we're seeing is an increasing deer population. We're sending the antler point restriction in a lot of counties in response to chronic wasting disease, and then just a general shift in the desires of our hunters to pursue antlered bucks and less interest in harvesting antlerless deer. I will note, significant in my mind at least, in the last 10 years, we have harvested more antlered bucks than we have does, and last year we finally shifted that a little bit. The margin was slim, but we did harvest more does and antlered bucks, and that is desirable given the status of our populations and our deer management objectives. Looking at deer hunter numbers, we have archery hunter top left, firearms hunters bottom right. We can see if we look at our archery deer hunter numbers, we had been a slow declining trend since about 2016, 2018. That has seemed to stabilize the last couple years. Firearms deer hunter numbers peaked about 10 years ago. You can see in the graph on the bottom right a pretty sharp decline in firearms deer hunters up until really the last couple years. We have seen that stabilize and a slight increase last year, which is really encouraging to see that declining trend shift and actually to have more hunters out there in the woods last year than we did the previous year. All right, shifting gears and talking about chronic wasting disease. The director touched on some of these numbers in her presentation. We sampled over 37,000 deer last year. Wanted to give a big shout out to Deb Hudman and her team for that massive effort to coordinate. That's a lot of samples in 1 year. Big thank you to all the staff that are involved in those efforts too, particularly those folks that are working on opening weekend during our mandatory sampling efforts, where most of those samples are collected, about 20,600 during opening weekend. But we also work with a network of taxidermists and processors, over 140 of those scattered throughout the state, that collect samples for us throughout the deer season. We also have freezer head drop locations in our CWD management zone counties, and of course, test sick deer as they're reported to us throughout the year. This map shows the distributions of positives, the yellow being 2024 fiscal year, and then the green dots would be previous years. We did have 162 positives, most of those being hunter harvested, although A fairly significant percent, 51, were removed during our targeted removal efforts. We have 8 new positive counties kind of scattered throughout the state, some up in northeast, north central, just east of here, and also in Jasper County in southwest Missouri. That brings the total to 39 positive counties, total CWD positive since 2012 of 572. Our targeted removal efforts were very successful this past winter. Just over 4,600 deer were removed. That was up from about 3,500 the previous year. I'll extend a big thank you to all the staff that were involved in that effort, working long hours in some pretty cold conditions last winter. I also want to thank our landowners and partners at USDA Wildlife Services for their assistance as well. Significant change last year was the first year we actually had removal goals for each one of our CWD core areas, and by all accounts did really well at that. Nearly 90% of that removal goal was met, so I was really pleased with those efforts and the dedication that it took to get there. Just over a third of the deer were removed by landowners, and that was a pretty healthy increase of what we've seen previously, so they're certainly a key partner in those efforts. And then with this map and text, just wanted to put those numbers into perspective and offer some additional numbers from last year. So as I mentioned, over 37,000 samples. If we look at it at the statewide scale, less than half of those were CWD positive. And if we look at an even more localized level for our targeted removal efforts, so those are deer removed within about 2 miles of a known positive detection, to have just over 1% of them test positive is certainly encouraging. Means that that disease is existing at a very low level throughout just about everywhere that we have found the disease in the state. We look at all the numbers from last year. Of all the positive counties that we had, more than 75% of them had less than 1% apparent prevalence, and more than 90% had less than 2% apparent prevalence. So very low numbers, even though we have a fairly broad geographic distribution of the disease. The infection rates remain very low. Our efforts are slowing the spread of the disease, and by maintaining an aggressive stance on CWD management, we continue to slow that spread and protect our deer herd. Shifting gears and talking about our deer management plan. So this year we are revising our 10-year deer management plan. Certainly a lot has changed in the deer world in Missouri since our plan was written back in 2014. We just talked about the expansion of chronic wasting disease. We talked about declines in deer hunter numbers that we've seen. Increasing deer populations, yet we have very liberal seasons and permits, and changing hunter preferences as folks become more and more interested in harvesting antler deer and showing less interest in harvesting antlerless deer. So these are some of the challenges that we'll face, are facing, and will continue to face in some regard in the next 10 years, and so all of those will be addressed as we revise our deer management plan. Wanted to offer a timeline of where we've been and where we're heading. Last year, the deer working group met in early fall to start reviewing the current plan and start talking about the revision of that plan. We had a draft plan complete in February of this year. We sent that to staff in April to get their feedback on that plan and have updated the draft plan. We will be meeting with select partners next month and have them provide us an opportunity on the feedback for our goals and objectives in the draft plan. We will also have a public comment period and hunter survey in July. We'll incorporate feedback from those efforts in August into the revised draft plan, send it out for staff review in early fall, and have the plan complete by this October. Now for the recommendations for this year's deer season. Our first recommendation is to add the 18 counties that you see on the screen to our CWD management zone. 4 of those counties had their first detection this past year. The remaining 14 were within 10 miles of a positive detection. As a reminder, any county that has a positive or is within 10 miles of a positive, we recommend adding to the CWD management zone. That triggers certain regulations to take effect to help slow the spread of CWD. Mineral and feeding supplementation ban exists in the management zone. Also, carcass transportation restrictions exist for those counties in the zone. It also makes them candidates for our mandatory sampling efforts on opening weekend, and also for the CWD portion of firearms deer season that occurs on the tail end of our November portion. With these proposed additions, it would bring us to 70 counties in the management zone. Second recommendation is to require hunters in 43 of our management zone counties to bring their deer in for CWD sampling on opening weekend of our November portion this year, which would be November 16 and 17. So all of the shaded counties on the map are our management zone or proposed additions to our management zone. The orange counties are where we're proposing to conduct mandatory sampling on opening weekend. We arrived at these counties based on a number of risk factors. We ranked all 70 counties from greatest to least risk. and I've proposed conducting mandatory sampling in those of the greatest risk. Some additional information it will require about the same staffing effort that we've used the last several years for mandatory sampling. Our third recommendation is to add these same 18 counties that we saw in recommendation 1, those that we are recommending enter the CWD management zone to be open during that CWD portion of firearms deer season, which this year falls November 27th to December 1st. Again, giving some additional opportunity for hunters in these management zone counties to harvest additional deer to help with deer management goals and CWD management goals as well. Our fourth recommendation is to rescind the antler point restriction in the counties that we see in red circles. These are either counties that had their first positive or that entered the management zone. All the counties are proposed to enter the management zone. Our recommendation is always to rescind the antler point restriction for counties that enter the management zone because allowing harvest of those young deer would be beneficial from a disease management standpoint. We know young bucks are the most likely to disperse from the area that they were born. And if they're positive, they have the greatest chance of spreading the disease to new areas. And so it's in line with our disease management strategies to rescind the antler point restriction for all counties that had it as they entered the CWD management zone. Our fifth recommendation is to allow archery antlerless permits in the 4 counties in extreme southeast Missouri. This map shows all the counties in orange last year that allowed archery antlerless permits. The 4 counties in extreme southeast Missouri did not. What we've seen as we've expanded the opportunity for folks to use these permits, that in counties that are adjacent to these, we see very little actual increase in antlerless harvest. Probably a lot of the deer that would be harvested on those would end up being tagged with a archer's hunting permit anyway, so we don't expect really a meaningful increase in harvest of antlerless deer because of this change, but what it does do is simplify our regulations. It would allow us to say that archery antlerless permits would be available statewide, certainly a simpler message for our hunters. Our sixth recommendation is to increase from 2 to 4 firearms antlerless permits in the 5 counties that we see the red circles. These are all proposed additions to the management zone. Recall last year, Commissioners, we made a change to increase the maximum number of firearms antlerless permits from 2 to 4 in most of the counties in the state, those that you see in the orangish beige color. And so with these 5 counties entering the management zone, increasing from 2 to 4 would keep those in line with most of the counties in the management zone. Even though we don't expect a significant increase in harvest going from 2 to 4 because most hunters don't harvest that many antlerless deer, it would give landowners in those counties some additional opportunity to fill some additional permits. Our 7th recommendation is approval of amendments to conservation area deer and turkey hunting regulations for this year's season. Several conservation areas that were proposed to be added to the fall deer and turkey booklet. The first 2 because we're proposing to have those conservation areas included in our managed deer hunt. And the last 2 because those are newly acquired areas. And remove several sites from the booklet because those areas have been sold. And our last recommendation is approval of managed hunts for this year's deer season. Most of these hunts, as you can see, are hunts on state parks managed by our partners at the Department of Natural Resources. So a lot of these aren't necessarily new hunts, but they weren't in the fall deer and turkey booklet last year. And so the Department of Natural Resources does surveys on their state parks, and when deer numbers are above desired levels, they work with us to have managed deer hunts on those areas to make sure that they keep deer populations at desired levels. And then on my last slide, just some considerations for the 2025 deer season. As you saw from some slides that I showed in my presentation earlier, certainly the distribution of chronic wasting disease has changed quite a bit in the last couple years with the recommendations that we're proposing this year. That would, in terms of the management zone size would be 61% of our counties. We've had 17 new positive counties in the last couple years. So that's caused our CERVID program, wildlife health program, to get together, assess our CWD surveillance and management strategy, and develop some regulatory considerations for the 2025 deer season. We are engaging with administration at this time about those considerations. And the previously mentioned public engagement strategy this summer, our Deer Hunter Survey, would be helpful in ultimately determining what those recommendations might be. And depending on the information that we learn this summer from that effort, and the level of public engagement that we feel would be necessary would dictate the timeline of any regulatory proposals in that regard. So depending on the information that we receive, it could possibly be 2025 or 2026 before any of those considerations would be brought forward. And I look forward to a more in-depth discussion about deer management and chronic wasting disease at a future meeting with you, Commissioners. And that concludes the presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Any questions?
I just have a couple. Thank you for that presentation. You've said it, and I've heard it back home in Franklin County. Folks are so appreciative of the increased opportunity with the early antlerless and CWD portions of the deer season. So that has been so welcomed. One question I had is I've also heard from staff their appreciation of those goal-setting targets for CWD. That is something that we are going to continue in the future for staff as well, correct?
Yes, we are.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just very comprehensive, good research, good presentation.
Thank you.
Well, of course, I'm not very interested in this topic, Jason, you know that, so, but, you know, some questions I had, just one of them got my attention. You said there was 151 deer tested for CWD, and it's maybe something you have to get back with me, but I'm curious, I mean, sick deer were tested for CWD, I'm sorry. Was there a higher incidence in those deer that were reported sick than the other testing population, or do you know?
No, that level's been fairly stable through time.
Crazy.
Is this the largest increase in number of counties added to CWD that I can remember since I've been on the commission? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I think so.
But, I guess, you know, the challenge, and generally I have an opinion of how to solve a problem. This one I don't, so I'll just tell you. But, you know, you said, you know, changing hunter preferences on desire to harvest antler deer, and of course, the CWD management is completely in contrast with that. I mean, I know you're gonna be looking at this again, but I mean, do you just have any general comments of how we can manage CWD and satisfy hunter preferences? I mean, because it's difficult.
Yeah, it certainly is, you know, and if we look across the state in terms of hunter preferences for the antler point restriction, it differs a lot based on where you are. In southern Missouri, when we've surveyed our hunters, most hunters in most South Missouri counties do not support the antler point restriction. That's why we've never had it there. But certainly in central and portions of western Missouri and north Missouri, most hunters in those counties support the antler point restriction because they prefer to have an older buck age structure. But we know that having the antler point restriction in place in the management zone just is completely counter to what we're trying to achieve in terms of deer management. So, you know, each individual property owner is, of course, I mean, they can make the harvest management decisions, you know, based on what their desires are, but from, you know, an agency perspective and a disease management perspective, to leave the APR in place within the management zone would just be against everything that, you know, that we believe that we can do to help slow the disease. So when I've talked to hunters about it, I just try to put it into perspective in terms of short-term versus long-term, and looking long-term at what is in the best interest of our deer herd. You know, does it change the age structure of the buck segment? It certainly does in some areas. But I think having that young age structure, even though that's not desired by a certain segment of our deer hunters, is what's best. But it is a challenging topic for sure.
One thing I also noticed, I think you added Shannon County as a mandatory sampling, which I mean, kind of happy to see that. I know that's where we have our elk herd and stuff. What precipitated that? Maybe I didn't see something in the distribution, but I thought that was, I liked seeing it, but I was surprised seeing it. So I would just give me some insight there.
Yeah, so that was one of the positive whitetails that we had in Oregon counties, was within 10 miles of Shannon.
Okay.
So that's what brought
Okay.
Shannon into the zone.
Okay, that answers my question. And that'll be interesting to see that one play out, so, okay.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of new counties. It'll be the first time for mandatory sampling like Shannon this year.
Okay, thank you. Very, very good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, Commissioners, as you'll recall, in December, the commission voted to set dates for each portion of the 24-25 deer hunting season to allow hunters as much time as possible to prepare for the following year. So there will be no need to take action on those, and those dates are provided in your packet. Included in your packet are 3 orders of rulemaking for the 2024-25 fall deer season. If approved, these changes will be effective July 1, 2024. These actions, as described in Jason's presentation, are as follows. 3 CSR 10-7.433 deer firearms hunting season would add 18 counties to the CWD portion of the firearms deer season. 3 CSR 10-7.435 deer special harvest provisions would rescind the antler point restriction in 13 counties. And the final order of rulemaking is 3 CSR 10-7.437 deer antlerless deer hunting permit availability would increase the number of firearms antlerless deer hunting permits from 0 to 1 in 4 counties and from 2 to 4 in 4 counties. Mr. Chairman, I request commission approval of these action items as described.
Do I have a motion? to that?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Commissioners, as the next 2 action items, and as presented by Mr. Isabel, staff recommend adding 18 counties to the CWD management zone. With the addition of these counties, the recommendation presented for your approval today is to require hunters in 43 of the 70 counties within the CWD management zone to present their deer for CWD sampling if harvested during opening weekend of the November portion of the firearms deer season, which will be November 16th and 17th. Mr. Chairman, I request commission approval for the recommendation to add Adair, Boone, Cole, Dent, Douglas, Howard, Lewis, Marys, Monroe, Newton, Osage, Phelps, Randolph, Saline, Scotland, Shannon, Shelby, and Webster counties to the CWD management zone, and to require mandatory sampling of deer taking in the 43 of the 70 management zone counties during the first weekend of the fall firearms deer season as shown in your packet.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
I would just share that I really look forward to hearing from our staff and Jason to continue the conversation about what CWD management looks like in the future.
I very much look forward to that discussion as well. It's a challenging topic in which there are no quick solutions at this point.
Well, you know, and I'll just add to that, you know, I mean, I look at what other states are doing, and, you know, for as long as we've been dealing with CWD, you would think there would be a general consensus that this is the best way to approach it, and there is not. And
I
it's
would
really
offer
challenging.
that as serving as the Midwest Association of Fish and Wildlife Agency's Director Liaison to the Deer and Turkey Committee and the MAFWA Ad Hoc CWD Committee, in that role, I've had discussions with numerous states, and I won't necessarily speak for them, but I would venture to say that many of them look to us and to Illinois as the models as to how to approach this. It's not easy, and it does not come with any easy decisions, but based on the best scientific information, fact-based information we have to date, our approach is about as solid as anybody has gotten to at this point.
Well, you know, just to add to that, I mean, as the commission, we trust you guys to make the best decisions. I mean, we may ask a lot of questions in the process, but, you know, I know Oklahoma really went out there just recently on even releasing deer, and it was all opposed by the scientific-based conservation organizations, but overridden by the legislature. And that's one of the things that I think the citizens of Missouri need to really appreciate as far as where we're at on the management of our wildlife in general. And, you know, and I really appreciate your efforts on it.
Yeah, it is such a challenging topic, and it does, you know, venture into those actions that start to erode public trust, and I think we try to do our best, and I think Jason's very professional approach sort of alludes to, we are doing our level best to make sure that we have sound justification for the recommendations that we're bringing forward to you.
Yeah, and, you know, and I'm real sensitive to it, because they brought in the county I live in to it as CWD management zone. And so, and, you know, and I'm gonna vote to support it, but, I mean, do I like it? No. But do I think it's in the best interest? Yes.
Yeah, the vast majority of us, even those of us standing up here making recommendations, are impacted by these decisions.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. Any other discussion?
So 43 mandatory samplings for those 2 days in November.
Correct.
And I know that's a large effort by staff to do all that. I trust we have the necessary resources and staff availability to do that.
We do, and I'll commend, as many others have, and we continue to do, you know, our values of one MDC. Nothing exemplifies it like our mandatory sampling efforts. And so staff rally, It's their opportunity to pull together. In many cases, it's their opportunity to engage with staff from other parts of the state that they don't get the opportunity to communicate with. And so, from that standpoint, it is great. We are and continue to make adjustments to the staffing levels, and staff will see some changes that are being proposed by the team that will try to alleviate some of the requirements placed on them. But yes, we certainly make this one of our top agency priorities in terms of staffing resources and the dollars to support that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Commissioners, the next two action items for the 24-25 fall deer hunting season will establish hunting regulations on conservation areas and managed hunts. The conservation area regulations table in your packet reflects changes made to 24 areas as a result of this recommendation, including the addition and removal of areas and changes to allow methods and use of antlerless permits. Recommendations brought forward today include managed hunts held on properties owned by the Missouri Department of Conservation, Department of Natural Resources, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Army Corps of Engineers, and the National Park Service. A summary of recommended changes to the managed hunts is provided in your packet. Mr. Chairman, I request commission approval of these action items as described.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, the last action items are recommendations to adjust some permit prices to keep pace with continually rising cost of goods and services. The commission has approved price adjustments to most permits over the last several years. Per guidance from the commission, staff propose additional modest and gradual adjustments to permit prices over the coming years. Compared to other states, Missouri permit prices are in the middle to lower end of the price scale. Today's recommendations are an incremental increase to non-resident permit prices along with the daily fishing, daily small game hunting permits, and annual trout and migratory bird permits. Recommended adjustments to each of these permit types may be found in your packet. For members of the public who may be in attendance or viewing the live stream, details of these proposed changes may be found on the department's website. If approved today, these proposals will be filed with Secretary of State for an open public comment period from July 2nd through August 1st. Comments received will be compiled and presented as part of the formal orders of rulemaking for commission consideration at your September meeting. An anticipated effective date of these changes would be January 1st, 2025. Mr. Chairman, unless there are questions, I request approval for the recommended proposed permit adjustments as detailed in your packet.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Discussion, I guess, I basically wanted to get some input from you on why we specifically picked certain ones out for adjustment. So I wanted clarification for everybody and the public to understand that thought process.
Yeah, so the proposed permits to be changed are all the non-resident permits, and then the four other ones are ones in which we either do not designate the difference between a resident and a non-resident. So for example, the trout and migratory bird permits, there's just one permit. There is not a differentiation between non-resident and resident. Daily and small game, kind of the same way. In fact, one of them isn't even available for residents to purchase, right? And it doesn't make sense. So that's the reason, and based on previous guidance, when we've adjusted non-resident permits, we have included those as well.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question. Are these proposed increases, Jason, consistent with what was discussed and pre-considered back in September when all of this arose? These increases to the fees and permits?
Yeah, so this is part of guidance and direction we've received from the commission to be very deliberate in responding to changes in the consumer price index and, the reflection of the cost of increasing costs in goods and services, and the fact that, we had been in a pattern in which permits had not been adjusted in a long time. And so this is part of that incremental approach to be responsive to the changing costs that the agency bears.
I'm in agreement with having increased them back in September, but I was not on the commission at the time, and so there was a lot of discussion and public input, and today there are no surprises per se based upon any of those.
Yeah,
Correct.
shouldn't be.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all. Commissioners, a summary of all citizens' comments received since my last regulations report may be found in my formal report. The next meeting of the Regulations Committee is scheduled for July 25th, which will be mid-year code review. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my Regulations Committee report.
Your final one.
It would be my final one. And I appreciate the opportunity. It's been an absolute honor to serve as Regulations Committee Chair, serve as a member of the Regulations Committee, and serve in a role providing recommendations to the Regulations Committee since the beginning of my career, and being peppered by commissioners about regulations-related questions. I look forward to the opportunity to be peppered by the commission by a wider diversity of questions as we move forward. Having said that, it has been a true pleasure and an honor to serve in this role. Sarah, it's been a pleasure to serve as your deputy, and look forward to moving forward. Thank you all.
Thank you. Take a 10-minute break. Be back at 10:25, please.
Okay. I guess. It goes quick, doesn't it?
Commissioners Emeritus.
Does.
We're getting.
Okay, Andrew, you're up.
I am. Thank you, Chairman, members of the commission, Director Pauly. I'll be presenting the next two items. The first item is the 2024 fiscal year financial summary through April of 2024. And then the second item will be an action item for the FY '25 approval of the internal expenditure plan. So if you'll first turn your attention to the revenue variances, these have been provided in your advanced materials and are shown on the screen. Total revenues in fiscal year '24 through April of 2024 were 8.7% higher than fiscal year '23 through April 2023 and 4.2% above expectations. Conservation sales tax receipts were 8.8% above the same time period in fiscal year '23 and 3.5% above expectations. Permit revenues were 5.3% higher than the first 10 months of fiscal year '24 compared to '23 and 1.6% above expectations. The number of monetary hunting and fishing permits sold in the first 10 months of fiscal year '24 were 82,275 higher than the previous fiscal year. Federal reimbursements were 10.5% higher than this point in the last fiscal year and 14% above expectations. Federal reimbursements through April represent 17.4% of total revenues. Other revenue sources for the first 10 months of fiscal year '24 were 12% higher than the same point in the last fiscal year and 5.7% below expectations. Next, please turn your attention to the expenditure variances. Total operating expenditures for the first 10 months of fiscal year '24 were 14.7% higher than the previous fiscal year and 1.4% below expectations. Operating expenditures include personal services, expenses, and equipment purchases. Personal service disbursements were 15.4% above the previous fiscal year and 2.6% below expectations through April of 2024. Expenses were 5.2% higher than fiscal year '23 and 1.3% below expectations for the first 10 months of fiscal year '24. Equipment disbursements were 67% higher than the first 10 months of fiscal year '23 and 8% above expectations. Variance in expenditures from the previous year is mainly due to the timing of equipment purchases in previous years. Total capital disbursements were 46.8% higher than the previous fiscal year through April and 2.9% above the budgeted amount at this point in the fiscal year. Capital expenditures include land conservation and partnerships and construction. Large payments in April included land conservation partnership projects, hatchery renovations at Bennett Springs and Shepherd of the Hills fish hatcheries, and work on the wetland pump station renovation at Shell Osage Conservation Area. Total disbursements for the first 10 months of fiscal year '24 were 19.3% higher than the first 10 months of fiscal year '23 and in line with expectations. This concludes my remarks on the fiscal year '24 financial summary through April of 2024, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
So the personnel services and expenses are within your operating expenses?
They are within expectations, within the budget you
Right.
approved.
Okay. And so your 19.3, that's everything above that in relationship to personnel expenses, equipment, and capital when you put it all together, is that correct?
19.3 is the growth from the previous fiscal year
right.
through April.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But we're slightly below budget at this
Right.
point in the
Yeah, I
fiscal
see
year.
the .07 number on this low budget. And, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for preparing this and all you do to track the finances. On the previous page, 60, I had a question about the other revenues at the bottom, 12% above the last year's budget this time of the year and 5.7% under expectations of what it was to be at this time. Can you explain that and
So
what that is?
it's a very volatile area. It's not a very large revenue source. But when you talk about timber sales and revenues from surplus auctions, donations, the investment income on the fund balance, I mean, those things are all extremely volatile. So it does look like a big variance, but it's not that much
No,
in terms
I
of total
understand.
dollars.
So we expected to be basically 17.7% higher than last year at this time, but it's come in at 12 and 5.7% under last year's number at this time. Is that how I read that?
Yes, I think I'm following your logic correct. We expected it to be 5.7% higher and therefore 17% higher than the previous year, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Andrew.
So the next item is an action item for the commission approval of the fiscal year 2025 internal expenditure plan. We spent last commission meeting in April going through an extensive review of that at the budget workshop. So I request the commission approval of the Conservation Commission Fund for fiscal year 2025 internal expenditure plan with planned spending of $331,777,690. Total operating budget requests include $265,677,690 for personal service expense and equipment. The capital improvement request is $66,100,000 for construction and land conservation and partnerships. And the land conservation and partnerships and new construction totaling $41,850,000 are budgeted using revenues from fiscal years prior to fiscal year 25 projections.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, just a question. I think if I recall on your 66,100,000 for construction and land, 56 was construction and 10 was land,
That's
is that
accurate.
correct?
10 million is the budgeted amount for land conservation and partnerships.
Right,
56,100,000 would be for construction
right.
projects.
And so the difference between the 66 and the 41 is whether it's going to be in next fiscal year or prior fiscal years. Is that how that breaks out?
The 41 million, 10 of which is the land conservation and partnerships, so 31,850,000 is construction projects that are budgeted using revenues from prior fiscal years
right. And then-
instead of fiscal year 25.
So some 25, some prior years.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, I seconded that, Nicole, so if you've got that, okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Any chance you want to take that as one motion? Any chance you want to take?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director.
Hello, Jacob.
I have the next 5 agenda items for you. Yes, correct, 5.
Jacob, if you don't mind when you present these, we're just going to combine all the action items together as one vote. So present them all to us, and then we'll do them as a one vote, if everybody's okay with that. Okay, thank you.
You okay with that, Mark?
Yeah, it's fine. Sounds
First, I'm
good.
going to share some highlights from the major construction project status report. It's in your advanced materials. Please note the information in this report is as of the date of the report was submitted in May 6th, so some of the information has changed. Some construction progress has improved since the date of this report. But on the first page of the report, under the maintenance and repairs category, on line 5, at the Springfield Conservation Nature Center, the roof replacement project, the notice to proceed was issued on May 22nd. On line 8, Chesapeake Fish Hatchery, the hatchery building roof replacement project, we did open bids on April 11th, and that will be one of the action items you'll consider in a moment. Line 8, at the St. Louis Regional Office, and line 9, also at St. Louis Regional Office, there's 2 different projects there that we combined into one contract. We did open bids on April 25th, and that will be an action item for your consideration in a moment. Under the rehabilitations category, on line 17 at Montauk Fish Hatchery, the recirculation system control valve replacement project, notice to proceed was issued on April 30th. On line 18 at Shepherd of the Hills Fish Hatchery, the intermediate raceways replacement project, as the director indicated, progress is going very well there. As the date of the report, the project was 40% complete. On line 21 at 10 Mile Pond Conservation Area, the well improvements project, notice to proceed was issued April 3rd. The contractor has mobilized on site, and now they're waiting for materials to be delivered. And then on line 24 at the Conservation Commission headquarters, the site renovation project, we did open bids on April 25th, and that is also an action item for your consideration in a moment. On the next page of your report, at Fountain Grove Conservation Area, under the capital improvements category on line 1, the pump station is 75% complete. As the director indicated, there was flooding, and so that held off the contractor for a couple of weeks, so their work will progress into June, but they are still on track for substantial completion very soon. We anticipate a ribbon cutting ceremony later this summer. On line 2 at Little River Conservation Area, the main entrance drainage ditch crossing, that project is 10% complete. On line 3 at the Discovery Center, the entrance canopy replacement project, notice of proceed has not been issued yet. There are some pre-meetings that are required with our building permit from the city of Kansas City, so we have to have those meetings before we can issue notice to proceed, so that will be happening shortly. On line 5 at Shepherd of the Hills Fish Hatchery, the Conservation Center replacement, as the director indicated previously, that project is going extremely well. Contractor is 75% complete with that building. On line 6 at Shell Osage Conservation Area, the pump station development project is 80% complete. The flooding there was more prolonged than it was at Fountain Grove, so it actually kept the contractor off the site for about 5 weeks. The water's receded, they're getting back in there and cleaning up the sediment and getting back to finishing that project up. Should be done this summer. Then on line 7, Columbia Bottom Conservation Area, the road relocation project, we opened bids on April 18th. That will be the 4th action item for your consideration. Then down on line 17 at Bennett Spring Fish Hatchery, the hatchery renovation project, the project is 10% complete. Contractor is still working on the intake. The mechanical contractor is doing a lot of equipment installation in the hatchery building. And then the feed storage building is, the foundation is out of the mud, if you will, and they're progressing well there. And then last week, the contractor got their pumping operations, their temporary pumping operations approved, and it's functioning. We are now holding fish there nightly, so hatchery staff can stock on a more regular basis. They don't have to, the hatchery staff don't have to haul in fish as often. And so I appreciate hatchery staff's patience with us as we work to get the contractor's pumping system to an acceptable condition so that we could reliably use it. On line 18 at Ray Memorial Wildlife Area, the Shop Addition project, we have, if you'll notice, we are not going to construct that project with regional staff anymore. We are going to contract that out so that regional staff can focus their efforts on the Honeywell Hatchery Residence project. So that Shop Addition project is in queue for bidding now. On line 19 at Shanks Conservation Area, the hazardous materials storage building project, the design is complete. It is also in queue for bidding. And then Apple Creek Conservation Area, the service roads improvement project design is complete and it is in queue for bidding. So that concludes my remarks on the construction projects. And I'll go to the infrastructure asset management dashboard. The item I would like to highlight today is in the center panel, the HVAC, just highlighting that we have several HVAC assets that are beyond their expected life. If you look here, 41% are currently past their expected life with a replacement cost of approximately $5 million. If we were not to do anything for the next 5 years, that would increase to 61% and almost $7 million. The good news is that 5 weeks ago, we were able to fill the mechanical engineer position that we've been trying to fill for almost 3 years. And the even better news is that on June 1st, the second mechanical engineer position will be filled. So we look to get those mechanical engineers started on their projects very soon and start working on improving this metric on HVAC assets. So that concludes my remarks on the status report. Be happy to answer any questions before we move to the action items.
Mark, questions?
On the HVAC and stuff, I mean, you mentioned 2 mechanical engineers you're staffing, and then I know we talked the other day about, I think it was custom engineering, which I believe they're a subcontractor on the work you're doing around this building. Is that correct?
Correct.
Would they be an option to do some of that engineering design work for this HVAC work?
Yes, custom engineering is an option for us. We have convenience contracts set up with multiple service providers.
Okay.
The HVAC work, the mechanical work that was part of the site renovation project was incidental to the larger work, and so that was easily able to be managed by the project manager. Some of the larger HVAC projects that we have, we don't have staff currently with that expertise, and so it was difficult for us to contract that out with firms like Custom without someone on staff able to really review, scrutinize, and work collaboratively with them.
And don't get me wrong, it doesn't have to be custom. I'm just talking about
Yes.
other service providers
Service
that might
provider,
have
yeah.
that skill set or something.
So with the filling of the 2 mechanical engineer positions, we'll be able to utilize the firms like Custom more often, in addition to also providing services across the state
Okay.
for our smaller projects.
Okay, so
it's going to open up that line of work for us.
Right, right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good response.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to request a motion for actually 4 action items. One would be the Chesapeake Fish Hatchery, the Columbia Bottoms Fish Hatchery renovation, Columbia Bottoms road entrance, the commission headquarters renovation, and also the St. Louis office. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion on these projects? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jacob.
Thanks, Jacob.
Aaron?
Good morning, Commissioners. I have a few action items related to the Realty Committee. I will start with agenda item number 12 on the agenda, seeking your approval to acquire approximately 160 acres in Harrison County from Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, as an addition to the Pawnee Prairie Conservation Area. This tract is located within the Grand Rivers Priority Geography and will be actively managed for grassland wildlife.
Any discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Obviously, kudos to Quail Forever, Pheasants Forever, for working to acquire this very critical piece of future grassland habitat. And we look forward to working with them even more in the future. Agenda item number 13, we are seeking the Commission's approval to dispose of approximately 13 acres of the Rocky Fork Conservation Area located in Boone County through the competitive bid process. It's important to note this tract is extremely difficult for the public to access and provides little habitat value to the overall conservation area.
Okay. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Agenda item number 14, seeking your approval to dispose of 201 acres, which is a portion of the Binder Lake Binder Lake here in Cole County. We hope to transfer that property to the city of Jefferson. Currently, the surrounding land is owned and managed by the city of Jefferson. We just own the lake. And this will help simplify regulations, still provide the same public fishing opportunities under the current management scheme.
Do I have a motion to that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No, this is good. This is a win-win, I believe, isn't it, Aaron?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you all know, I've lived in Jeff City for 50-plus years. I had no clue that we owned the lake, so.
Well, now you know you do.
Now we do know.
Now you know. Okay.
Now we don't.
Now we don't.
Well, we have to vote.
Now you do, now you don't, yeah.
Okay, that was presumptuous.
Moving on, Commission.
No, we have to vote.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. Agenda item number 15, again, seeking your approval to dispose of 15.2 acres of a tract known as Possum Woods Conservation Area in St. Louis County. We're hoping to transfer this ownership to the city of Kirkwood. This will help simplify overall management and regulations as this butts up right against the city of Kirkwood's nature park. Again, seeking your approval to transfer this property to the city of Kirkwood.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just a very quick question. Aaron, thank you for the reports, and we've all had the pre-reads, and as we have a sense of this, but for the public who may be listening in or folks here in the room, for this item, and frankly for the first one, I should have posed this with the Miracle Farm. You know, how did that come to be? How did Kirkwood approach us in this case? And with respect to the first one, if you don't mind going back, and just, again, for informational purposes.
Sure. I think a lot of this has to do overall, Commission, with our overall land conservation strategy as we are looking to focus our efforts on the highest quality habitats where we have the most conservation effort, or the most conservation effort going on, as well as our community conservation efforts as well. So as we look at acquiring pieces of property, we're taking a very hard look at, as you're well aware, we receive about 120 offers each year. Very few of those actually make it to the commission. At the same time, we're looking at some of the holdings that we may have acquired back in the late 70s, 80s, or 90s, where we were greatly expanding our holdings for the agency. And some of those just don't fit the overall picture of where we're heading within the agency. But at the same time, we see the wonderful opportunity to partner with a community such as Jefferson City or the city of Kirkwood, where we can continue to provide that public access. It's just not under the department's triangle.
Well, and just to kind of clarify, and maybe I misunderstood this, but you said there were some safeguards as when the city of Kirkwood takes us over, if we're become unhappy with the management and the public access, we have some
Yes,
recourse.
there's a reversionary clause that we've put into the agreement that if we're not happy with how the city of Kirkwood is managing the property, that would come back to the department.
Okay.
I am 100% confident they will do a wonderful job.
But we're making sure we're preserving public access and utilization of the property.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any further questions?
No, those comments are very helpful to me, and I think others will find them instructive as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission.
Okay, thank you. Our forestry section chief, Michael.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, the Commission, Director Pauly. It's my pleasure to present the next 4 agenda items for your consideration. As you're aware, the department maintains an active forest management program on conservation areas using a variety of practices, including forest thinning, prescribed fire, tree planting, and the commercial harvest of timber. These management tools are used to enhance the health and diversity of forest and woodland natural communities, which provide multiple benefits to both wildlife and our Missouri citizens. The use of commercial timber harvest helps the department achieve its mission by enhancing terrestrial wildlife habitat, protecting water resources that support aquatic species, and recreation by sustaining healthy, vigorously growing forests that contribute to local economies, including forest products and tourism. All these actions contribute to the agency's success in achieving strategic outcome 1.1, Missouri has healthy land, water, and forests. In keeping with established procedures, I have 4 action items for your consideration associated with the sale of forest products. The first action item is listed as 16A on your agenda. This is a timber sale on Angeline Conservation Area in Shannon County. If approved, this harvest will improve forest health and long-term sustainability by using an uneven age management approach which will replicate a natural woodland structure. This will increase sunlight to the forest floor, will encourage oak and pine regeneration, and this approach will reestablish wildlife habitat as well as increase native grass and forbs. As such, we request approval to advertise and sell an estimated 785,392 board feet of timber located on 366 acres of Compartment 12 of Angeline Conservation Area in Shannon County.
Do I have a motion to?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, next item. The second action item is listed as item 16B on your agenda. This timber sale is on Current River Conservation Area in Reynolds County. If approved, this harvest will improve forest health, the long-term sustainability, forest health and long-term sustainability by using an uneven age management approach which will replicate natural woodland structure. These management activities will also provide similar benefits as listed in the first action item. As such, we request approval to advertise and sell an estimated 3,260,974 board feet of timber located on 792 acres of Compartment 16 of Current River Conservation, Reynolds County.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Third action item is listed as 16C on your agenda. This is a timber sale on Rocky Creek Conservation Area in Shannon County. If approved, this harvest will improve forest health and long-term sustainability by using an uneven age management approach, which will replicate natural woodland structure. These management activities also provide similar benefits as listed in the action items above. As such, we request the approval to advertise and sell an estimated 1,244,466 board feet of timber located on 830 acres of Compartment 8 of Rocky Creek Conservation Area in Shannon County.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and
Any
the final.
opposed? Motion carries. Okay, sorry.
That's right. The final action item is listed as 16D on your agenda. This is a timber sale on Woods and K Woods Conservation Area in Phelps County. If approved, this harvest will improve forest health and long-term sustainability by using a selection harvest to thin out overstocked forests and to replicate natural woodland structure. Regeneration harvest will also be implemented to create an early successional habitat, which is important for many wildlife species. These management activities will increase sunlight to the forest floor, which will promote native grasses and forbs, as well as oak regeneration. As such, we request approval to advertise and sell an estimated 778,000 board feet of timber located on 310 acres of Compartment 2 of Woods and K Woods Conservation Area in Phelps County.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second? And just, I'm curious, where are we at on total timber harvest that we've approved this year?
So with the approval right now, we're at 15,610,000 board feet. So
Okay.
we got about
Thank you.
14.
So, okay. I know in the past we've received criticism on our management. I don't hear any of that anymore, and I really appreciate your efforts on it.
Yeah, I just want to shout out to the RM field staff who pulled all these timber sales together. They had a really busy spring with all the CWD work, and then they had a really heavy wildfire season, so I appreciate everybody putting these sales together for me.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
So, Michael, approval to proceed is what you've asked for today, and you've granted approval. What's the turnaround time on this, from advertising the bid to receiving bids to evaluating bids to, I guess, finalizing the deal?
Yeah, I think usually it's about a month or so between getting approved. You got to advertise it for a couple weeks. You got to put it out there and have those showings, and then a bid opening, and you got to get those contracts awarded. I do know that some of the regions they're at capacity right now, so maybe one or two of these sales may not get sold till after July 1, just because they're at capacity with some of the sale activity going. But they'll be in short term being put on the ground there, so.
So by the end of the summer?
Oh, yeah, for certain, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right.
Okay, so I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Michael. Aaron?
Back on schedule.
Back up again. Commissioners, I just have to note that I'm sure you noticed that the briefing papers that Michael made for each of those timber sales is greatly enhanced, and it's definitely an excellent product. I want to provide a short legislative update for the commission. Commissioners, as you're well aware, the 2024 legislative session officially came to an end last Friday. It was over well before then due to the turmoil and controversy within the Missouri Senate for the most part. A lot of infighting amongst the Republicans, some other large legislative priorities that resulted in a very long filibuster by the Democratic senators that eventually the legislation failed for various reasons. But in the end, only 28 non-budgetary bills actually made it to the governor's desk, which is an all-time low. The previous low was 31 in 2020 as a result of the pandemic. We are fortunate. We did have one bill that we were following that did make it to the governor's desk. That was Senate Bill 754, which was sponsored by Senator Tony Luetkemeyer, which includes Max's Law, which will increase the penalties if someone harms a law enforcement canine. So that would apply to our canine unit, which I'm very happy to see. And it was one of only 4 bills I actually testified on this session. It was really a light load, a large part because of the controversy, but also of all the work that our staff have done, that Jake has done to build relationships and having excellent committee chairs that are here to help and support the department. So that's been good as well. The appropriation process was relatively easy this session as well. Again, a sincere thank you to Andrew and his team in helping us prepare the executive budget as well as all of our branch chiefs and budget staff that have been involved. Right now, we will be awaiting the governor's action on the FY25 budget, which he will need to complete by June 30th. Normally, the governor tends to take action on the budget by mid-June, so we'll see what happens there. We saw a variety of bills filed this year that impacted the commission's authority, the commission structure, our conservation agent's ability to enforce the wildlife code, and several of the commission's revenue streams with sales tax exemptions, permit exemptions, as well as diverting revenues to other entities. None of those bills made it out of committee this year, so definitely a good session. Again, just a huge thank you to staff for helping Jake with the legislative field trips. There is no rest for the weary or Jake, as I expect him to start field trips in the next week or two, which I know he already has several of those lined up. I don't have to tell you or staff how valuable those are to get legislators out in the field, get them out of the Capitol, to see what we are doing to help connect their citizens with nature as well as our citizens. It's truly been something I'm very proud of, as we had one of our first field trips back in 2011, shortly after the elk were restored to Missouri. That was a hugely controversial issue. Took a couple legislators down to Peck Ranch. They called the director at the time that evening and said, we will no longer have a problem with the elk restoration given that landscape down there. So that helped me realize the importance of getting folks to the field, and we will continue to do so. And finally, congratulations to Commissioner Wagner for the easiest confirmation I have ever had to work through in my 18 years at the Capitol. So congratulations. With that, Commission, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Good work.
just good work. Keep it up, Aaron. We're
Thank
counting
you.
on you.
Point of personal privilege, just real quick. Like Jason, I have to tell Sarah, it has been an absolute treasure and a once-in-a-life opportunity to be your deputy the past 7.5 years. And please continue to text me pictures of plants if you need them to be identified.
What is it, Jake?
And snakes, too.
Hey, Sarah.
Mr.
come
Chairman, can I just quickly add, Aaron, thank you for your kind words. And you mentioned your staff and Jake, and all rightfully so, but we cannot leave you out of this round of compliments for the legislative session. You were over there, you've laid the groundwork, developed a strategy, as you have for years, and you're a tremendous asset to this organization in the legislature. So thank you.
Okay, we're getting close to wrapping up. First up, before I talk about you one more time, which is going to be a wonderful opportunity, I want to recognize a couple of people. Carolyn Bradford, Emeritus, and actually she's been a mentor to me we've had many conversations and been very, very helpful and very wise, and I appreciate the mentorship, Marilyn. But, I hope I didn't wear you out with some of my questions, so anyway. And then Becky Plattner is here. And since Rhonda is back there.
Rhonda's back there,
Has
yeah.
been one of the backbones
Rhonda.
of this organization. I wanted to recognize her too, so she's really been wonderful. And then also Bruce Sassman. Where is Bruce at? You know,
Back
Bruce, you're amazing, seriously. I mean, everywhere I go, and I don't go to everything, but you're always there. And so, and your wife, Jan, where's Jan at? She's right with you at every step. And your support of conservation, Bruce, I can't tell you how much. I mean, people that are always there consistently, it really tells you their character, and it means a lot. So, with that, Sarah, I am very honored to be the chair in your retirement. I hope I didn't cause it. But the reception last night was wonderful, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of comments, but a couple of things I was going to tell you. When I was in residency, there was a guy named John Casco, and he was probably the best motivator of people that I've ever seen. And what I mean by that, he inspired me to accomplish things that I didn't think I was capable of accomplishing. And, you know, it's kind of fear. The fear of the unknown is usually the fear of the unknown, but you're capable of doing a lot more than your capabilities. And, you know, like I said last night, your ability to instill that in people, I watch it every day, you know, with this group of people. And most group of dedicated people, you know, and when I ask difficult questions and people, they want to go find the answers, you know, it's not really that. And usually come back with an answer that exceeds what I was expecting. And you've instilled that in the people, in this group of people, and that is a remarkable character that is not learned. It's just something that you have as a gift, and appreciate you. Okay. And I think we have something from the commission that we wanted to give you. And you, sir.
So, I promise that we're gonna adjourn here shortly, Mr. Chairman, and I so appreciate folks, being in the crowd today. But I just have to say, on the record, what a privilege this has been. You know, you come into these jobs, and Jason, I know you already know this, with this amazing legacy of an organization that is second to none in the world. And nothing against Alabama, Chuck, but a second to none, all based upon this beautiful Missouri model that I know we know by heart. And so sometimes when you step into these roles, you're like, the prayer is, Lord, please don't let me screw this up, because this is this amazing organization filled with passionate professionals who want to go above and beyond every day. what you learn is that it is such an amazing organization of professionals that, to your point, really all it takes is a little feeding and encouraging and empowering, because the brain trust is here and the heart is here. And so words cannot express the privilege it has been just to have some small part of that, of the feeding and nurturing of these amazing individuals. Rock stars throughout this organization. But I do know that I am not easy, Nicole and company. I can be a lot to take care of. I lose a few things. And sometimes I got a lot of things on my list that I want to get done, that it takes other people actually getting it done. And so I do have to say to those of you who had to deal with me on a daily basis, bless your hearts. And that does include Miss Rhonda and Nicole, you're a saint. And to the most amazing deputies, Jennifer Batson Warren, you are second to none, my dear. You are just remarkable. And Aaron and Jason and my actings that I've had the privilege of working with, Jenny Frazier, best general counsel in the state of Missouri and beyond, and the director's office staff and my branch leadership and my regional administrators. I love you guys. I love you guys. I will miss you dearly, but please keep doing this amazing work you do every day. I am so grateful for you. Thank you.
So I think everybody would agree Scott has his hands full now. So, and with that, we are adjourned. And then there was a couple of people that wanted to make a couple of comments, I think Randy and Tom, and so I wanted to have them available. So if you guys, Randy, if you want to come up.